Well, you finally did it, internet. I hope you're proud of yourselves. Right off the bat, I want to get out ahead of my own instinct to bluntly criticise this movie and say that if nothing else, what we have on our hands here is interesting. The result of a unique situation where a director, in this case Zack Snyder, is forced to leave a project early due to personal reasons, only to, through a combination of vociferous fan complaints and the unprecedented impact of COVID-19 on the movie industry, be allowed to return 3 years later to recut, recolour, reframe and generally blow a cool 70 mil on restoring the movie to their own image. Will we ever see something like this again? It's hard to imagine the stars aligning again in such a way that it would, so for that reason, Zack Snyder's The Justice League is worthy of note, if not for its qualities as an actual movie. And it's not a bad movie. It's certainly better than the unbalanced, inconsistent and generally tawdry product that Joss Whedon produced back in 2017. It's just not so much better that it justifies some of the bolder choices that Snyder made. Case in point, the runtime, a svelte 242 minutes and fully double the length of the original release, makes the viewing experience feel overlong and bloated. And it feels as if Snyder knows this, splitting the movie up as he does into parts separated by interstitial cards with a quote from the following section like you're watching an episode of Frasier, and allowing you to go and get a beer, sleep or write a brief thesis in between viewing sessions before returning to your movie watching odyssey. Unfortunately, I didn't do this. I watched all of it in one harrowing sitting, meaning I now need to look my future grandchildren in the eye and explain to them that Grandad never made time to watch Gone with the Wind, but Snyder's Justice League was within his reach. Speaking of striking changes, the shift to a 4:3 aspect ratio is an interesting choice and one which, in the hands of a director with a better sense of image, may well have worked, filling the screen with these titans to accentuate their larger-than-life qualities. And while Snyder does occasionally demonstrate some of his skill in capturing static hero shots, along with photographer Fabian Wagner, the overwhelming effect of the new aspect ratio is the feeling that someone has merely lopped off the edges of the screen rather than shot this with 4:3 in mind. Likewise, much of the post-production effort appears to have gone on relighting and altering the colour grading of scenes to remove the washed-out quality of Whedon's work and replace it with Snyder's favoured hard shadows. And for the most part this works. Most scenes in this movie are far better to look at than they were. However, the sections of Justice League set in Atlantis appear not to have changed much at all, being notably muddier and uglier than those depicted in 2019's Aquaman, and it feels baffling that they wouldn't make some effort to line up their own underwater escapades with those of a movie which was widely praised for being nice to look at. In terms of story changes, Snyder rearranges and bulks out the narrative of Justice League to generally positive effect. Cyborg actually has something to do and a meaningful character arc now. The movie immediately gets into an exciting and mightily extended action set piece after the opening scenes where Steppenwolf doggedly pursues the Amazonians for their mother box. Ezra Miller's Flash gets a new, bizarre yet incredibly entertaining scene where he applies for a job at a pet store and then has to save a young woman from a car crash, including some striking special effects to capture his super speed. And Batman spends fully the first half of the movie in Bruce Wayne get-up, searching for members of his would-be super team. Affleck remains an interesting choice for the character, bringing a world-weariness and vulnerability to the role that we haven't really seen before, and I generally really enjoyed much of his work in the first few hours. As such, it's a real shame that the parts of this movie where he actually plays Batman are so misjudged. Gone are the martial arts striking from the shadows or any meaningful gadgets. In their place are guns, and lots of them. I appreciate that this was just as much a flaw in Whedon's release of the Justice League 2, but it bears repeating. The characterization bothered me so much that it spoiled the entire climax of the movie. Where all other characters are busy getting moments which at least make an honest attempt to show off their characters' powers, Batman is running around with an alien rifle shooting bad guys, or gunning them down in his Batmobile that is bristling with weapons. It's a thoroughly uninteresting depiction of the character and feels like it completely misses the mark. Notwithstanding that Batman isn't really supposed to kill people, Michael Keaton dropping guys with TNT strapped to their chests down manholes aside, it's hard to escape the feeling that this was a choice made by Snyder and maintained by Whedon to make Batman feel real in a team with heroes who are ostensibly far more powerful than him. I can't claim to know his thoughts, but this is how it felt to me, and it seemed like an awful miscalculation. No one cares if it doesn't make sense how Batman keeps up with Superman, he just does, alright? No more questions! Amy Adams as Lois Lane and Ciarán Hinds as Steppenwolf are both still criminally underused. There are confusing character appearances which come out of nowhere and really add very little to the movie, and in fact feel like Snyder included them purely as a middle finger to the studio execs who pulled the plug on the proposed sequels, which would have, presumably, featured these characters more prominently. And the whole experience is wrapped up with a neat little 40-minute bow, which includes a thoroughly confusing and post-apocalyptic dream sequence, the only part of the movie that Snyder actually shot new footage for, where Superman has well and truly ballsed up the world and a ragtag team of Batman, Mira, Deadshot, Flash and no one's favourite crown prince of crime Jared Leto fight to survive. As far as epilogues go, it puts Return of the King to the test, if only in terms of length rather than quality. There are myriad other flaws in this movie that Snyder has not managed to correct with his cut, but ultimately, this isn't a terrible experience. It has some value as a fun, dumb comic book thing, and if you love these characters or Snyder's own dark brand of violent action, you will almost certainly find something to enjoy here, though I cannot in good conscience recommend that anyone does it all in one sitting. And frankly, there are already better versions of this kind of movie, albeit with less grandiosity and scale, in DC's own wheelhouse, never mind the Marvel pantheon. Thank you for joining us here on The Culture Cave. If you enjoyed this video, a like would be much appreciated, and why not subscribe and check out the rest of the content we produce. I promise some of it's good. I've been Konrad, and I'll see you next time.